Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. I'd like to welcome you back here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. We've got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Flagstaff High School boys soccer coach Mike Jenkins. He'll talk about his lengthy soccer career, taking him all the way to Anchorage, Alaska. A very interesting conversation from Coach Jenkins. We'll also be joined by Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson, who has got an extensive career in the northern part of the state, specifically in Flagstaff. We'll talk about that and the upcoming basketball season. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Mingus Union High School girls basketball coach Paul Ventura to talk about the upcoming season and how the Marauders could be a surprise team out of the 4A Grand Canyon region. All of that and a whole lot more right here on Off the Bench, only on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. We will be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Mingus Union High School girls basketball coach Paul Ventura. Coach Ventura, welcome on to the show.
Hi, Philip. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you, Coach. You took over the program in 2018. You were previously a coach at the middle school level. You end up coming up here to the varsity level. You're also a corrections officer, I believe, or a probations officer here in the county. But coaching, you got into it. What got you into it, and how did it lead you to the job at Mingus?
Well, I've always wanted to coach. When I was in high school, I did some community service as a youth coach, and it kind of gave me that bug to want to do it as I got older. My dad was a coach, and I learned a lot from him. So I always and my uncle as well. So I always knew that was something I wanted to do. When my wife and I moved here, she was pregnant with our first daughter, right. And the school that she was teaching at did not have a sports program.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got involved. Was my father and I we decided to help them build up a program. He coached the boys. I have had a daughter on the way, so I thought now's the time to learn how to coach girls, and there is a little difference. And so I moved into the girls program. He coached the boys for a year, and I coached the girls for several years.
Now, my dad was my Little League baseball coach and basketball coach for just a little bit. So I know kind of the, sort of getting to play, your dad being your coach and then wanting to coach alongside him. Of course, unfortunately, I never got that opportunity. My dad stopped coaching after my freshman year of high school, and I stopped playing after my sophomore year. So we never got a chance to coach a Little League team together. But it's pretty neat that you've got almost like a family history of coaching, which led you to the job here at Mingus, obviously with your daughter wanting to get into coaching basketball. You have a passion for basketball and led you to this job. Outside of your dad, is there anybody else who specifically you model your coaching style off of?
I try to take a little bit from as many people as I can. I can't say that there's one specific person that I try to coach like. I'm a big reader, and so I'll look at reading as many articles as I can, or watching some YouTube videos actually of a lot of college coaches that I really respect, and other high school coaches for that matter. One of the ones this summer that I did a lot of research on and watch a lot of YouTube videos on is the coach at Madore in California. And they're an extremely successful program. They have tons of kids that go on to play college, and the coach has been there for quite a long time. And a lot of the things he talks about has nothing to do with the X's and O's of basketball, and a lot more to do with how to build a program, how to keep the kids engaged, get them to play really well together, and then help them succeed and achieve their goals. So he's someone that I've looked at. And then like in college ranks, you look at women's coaches, especially the previous coach at Notre Dame. She was so good, and I learned a lot by watching them play. Obviously, like Gino Ariema, I've read books written by him and watched his teams play and hear him speak about basketball and use those little things.
Yeah, no, Pat Summitt. She was one of the coaches of Tennessee for the longest time, a very successful female college coach for the girls program for the Lady Volunteers. Another one that I myself have been a big fan of, Becky Hammond over with the San Antonio Spurs. Yeah. Hopefully she'll get an opportunity to coach an NBA basketball team. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of really good inspirational coaches on both sides, the boys and the girls. You mentioned a few of them, obviously the Coach Gio over at UConn. I mean, the guy's an absolute legend. John Wooden over at UCLA. It's funny you mentioned Modern Day. I got an opportunity to go when I was in high school, a freshman in high school. I went to a brand new school. We went to a tournament at Palm Desert High School in California. I'm very familiar with Modern Day. We got a chance to see Modern Day play. This was back in like 2009, 2010. And those kids, we were probably, our tallest kid was maybe 6'2", and we were watching kids 6'2", 6'3", 6'5", dunking and throwing up alley-oops. And I sat in the stands and went, thank God we don't have to play them. But yeah, a really, really good school. And they're a fantastic school up in the Orange County area of California. I'm very familiar with them. As you mentioned, you do have a lot of coaching inspirations. Is there kind of one thing you like to emphasize with your players when they go through your program?
I want them to learn. Well, I think a well-rounded coaching philosophy is important. We focus, my staff and I, every single practice, we try to bring something back to a real life example. And it's kind of a cliche now to say, well, we're teaching life lessons, but we try to teach life lessons every day. The importance of being on time and what that means when you have a job, working together as a team. And my two assistant coaches are firefighters. And like you said, I'm a probation officer. Right. We have dangerous jobs. And if we don't learn how to work with a team, you could be put at risk. And so trying to bring it back to, it never stops. Working in a team and being a good teammate doesn't stop throughout your life. Even with what you're doing, you have to rely on other people around you to help you to be successful. And then you have to do your part to be successful. And that's one of the things we try to teach them. I'm a big proponent too on sportsmanship and winning with some humility and losing with some class, and understanding that you're going to have failures and then you're going to have some successes, and how to handle both. We did a lot of preparation working on like team building things that ended up getting shut down because of the pandemic. But that was a big focus going into the season, was team building, and then knowing that the 2 hours in the gym was going to handle the basketball part. Hopefully we can get back to a lot of that stuff as we go forward.
And it seems like that, I know that Mingus Union has moved on to go back to their distance learning model, but it seems like you are going to get an opportunity to start to do a little bit more hands-on with your team and in coaching and try to, get them ready for the season as best you can. Obviously, with the pandemic going on, you're a little limited because of county numbers, because of school decisions, or, maybe they want to keep the school closed. We've seen that in a few counties where they've just shut down the schools completely, or if you live in California, they shut your entire state down. But, here in Arizona, we kind of are at a somewhat decent little advantage that we haven't been completely shut down. And here in the county of Yavapai, of course, you getting in the opportunity to do a little bit more with your team very, very soon. But last year, the Marauders struggled a little bit in the region. You did graduate your second leading scorer, Tyra Archuleta Gabaldon, and of course, national anthem singer Olivia Gordon, who did come back and do the national anthem recently with one of our final Mingus volleyball broadcasts, which was great. Olivia's got a fantastic voice. Who can we see kind of step up in their places coming up this year?
I think last year was disappointing. We had some goals, and obviously we didn't achieve those goals. Losing a kid like Olivia, who's a really well-rounded kid, hurts because she's positive and she's a good student. She's a great kid. So you have to fill that role, like that locker room role. On the court, we're sound. We're going to surprise a lot of people this year. We're not going to be the doormat of the Grand Canyon region, and we're going to win a lot of basketball games. And it's the first year since I've been there where we're not going to have a lot of kids playing on two different teams. Okay. So the varsity team is set, and there's no kids that are also playing on JV and playing on varsity as of now, especially with, hopefully there's no injuries and hopefully there's no COVID issues. But we have 10 solid kids on varsity, and several of them have varsity experience, which helps. Chase Dirksen, who's our leading scorer, is returning. And she's a fantastic athlete all the way around. But she's improved quite a bit. She's also a good leader on and off the court. So she's a senior that we're going to rely on. And she's 6 foot tall, which helps. We have a second 6 foot tall girl who's a sophomore. Her name is Taylor Brock. And she's also athletic. Her skill set isn't quite what we want it to be yet, but she's improving every single day. She's a hard worker. Having 2 athletic 6 foot girls on the court at the same time is going to be really helpful for us. Then we have a few other seniors, Yasmine Mestis, who she did play some varsity as a sophomore. She got injured. And then so last year was her first season playing varsity all the way through. Yaz is a fantastic defensive player and will definitely get you some buckets when you need it. But really, she's one of those kids that on defense, she has quick hands, quick feet, and she anticipates well. And then Kobe Madore, who also is a senior, and she's played varsity for the last couple of years. She's going to move back to a more normal position. Having some other girls that can handle the basketball and make good decisions will allow her to play off the ball a little bit more. That's going to help Kobe. That will help her be successful. And then Emma Hogard, who's also a senior, who's a lot like Olivia Gordon for me. She's that kid that is a great all-around kid. She adds some humor when it needs to be added. And she's a great, hardworking kid that, every team needs to have. And then we have some juniors and that are really going to help us. I mentioned Taylor is our lone sophomore on varsity. And we have Jade Bach, who's a returner on varsity that's a junior, and Mariana Lopez, who played a little bit of varsity at the end of the year last year when I needed another guard. And she's really worked hard over the summer to be prepared to handle the basketball, run an offense, be a leader on the floor.
It seems like, you mentioned Chase Dirksen coming back this year. Obviously, we got a chance to see her during volleyball season. I know she's got more plans on the basketball side as opposed to volleyball in her future plans. But 8 points, basically almost 9 points a game from Chase Dirksen last year, your leading scorer. You talked about some of her impact on the team, but what really kind of caught my eye when talking, when putting my questions together for this interview was the JV and freshman teams had phenomenal years last year. And I know that you rattled off a few players that probably are going to be making the jump from those lower levels to the top. But just more specifically, Coach, how has that collaboration with the lower levels been as the development seems to be there for this team in the future going forward with Mingus? As you said, that the Marauders this year are going to surprise a few people, but I think even going forward, the Marauders are looking pretty good going into the next coming years.
Yeah, I agree. It's Troy Hoke is our JV coach, and Joe Odell is our freshman coach. And they both just bought in completely. I've known Troy for a long time. I coached his daughter, Taya, who's on the JV team, and she's a sophomore. So I've known them for a long time, and they bought in to my philosophy of what I want to get done with the program. And it's all about building fundamentals at that freshman level, getting those kids. Our talk with them at the beginning of the year is I don't care what the wins and losses are. It's all about improving so that when you do get to the varsity level, we're not learning basics anymore. We can be a little more advanced and push it a little bit more. And so Joe's great about that with the freshmen, and it shows with the win and loss because they actually go out and they perform. And our JV as well. There's games actually with the JV team. They shouldn't have lost a game last year. The only times they lost were when it was a mental thing. It was a mental breakdown. They weren't focused. and maybe the effort wasn't quite there. But skill-wise, they have it. And so a lot of those kids are moving up, and over the next few years, we should be good. And that was our focus. That first team in 2018, I felt bad for. I was their third coach in 4 years. And so talk about mature kids. I told those seniors, we might not win much because now you're learning something new again. But what they were doing was laying some groundwork for 3, 4, and 5 years down the road. And I got to be, they were great about it. They said it all the time. It's not about us. It's about you guys. And it's going to pan out. And I talked a lot about year 3 because that's usually a time when a coach has gone into a program that you have to start to be successful. And so by year 3, these kids have been around me long enough now that they understand the expectations, and they've either bought in, because if they didn't buy in, they would have left. Right. So we have buy-in. And so the juniors coming up, Rachel Odell, who's Joe's daughter, she's a junior that's going to be on varsity. She provides a little bit of size. She's like a in-between type of player. She could play like 3 or 4 different positions. And she really stepped up last year as a JV player. Maddie Mathis is another junior who hurt herself at the beginning of the year. She was on varsity. She hurt herself, but then she ended up playing JV. Excellent player. She'll be moving up to varsity. And then Heaven Claw, who is the smallest player out there, but also when she was on the floor, she got injured last year as well, but when she was on the floor, she adds a dimension as a point guard. She's really unselfish. So those girls that were really successful last year on JV are stepping up with me this year, and they've bought in. They understand that to play, to be on the floor, we have to do what we've talked about doing as a team. And those 10 girls have bought into the message. And I think that right now they're not worried about what's going to happen on the court. They're worried about being able to play. Right. And I think, that anticipation enough has gotten them that drive that they need to be successful this year.
Well, we're all excited to find out what happens in the 4A Grand Canyon region this year, Coach, as the Marauders are going to be chasing those Eagles of Flagstaff, and we'll actually get a chance to talk with Coach Tyrone Johnson a little later in the show. But Coach Ventura, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program and talking about those Mingus Marauders, and we're excited whenever the winter season gets kicked off, and we cannot wait to see what and how that region will shake out.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me.
Well, we thank you for coming on, Coach. Best of luck coming up this season. Hopefully we'll get a chance to connect a little later in the season and talk about the successes of the 2020 to 2021 winter season, or however you want to call it. But regardless, Coach Ventura, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Flagstaff boys soccer coach Mike Jenkins on the other side of this break. Off the bench, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Flagstaff High School boys soccer coach Mike Jenkins. Coach Jenkins, welcome onto the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you. You have a pretty extensive history when it comes to soccer. You started playing youth soccer in Tucson, a little bit south of the northern region of the state. You played on a club travel team in Kansas City, Missouri. Then you made your way to Anchorage, Alaska, where you won 3 state titles. Coach, you've got so much experience. How did that, different regions, almost different states. You're out of the, technically Alaska is a part of the United States, but I guess it's not directly in the U.S., but you got so much experience, Coach. How did that kind of build you as a player and as the coach we see today?
I think, well, tribute to my dad who was in the Air Force, and that's kind of why we moved around a little bit. He flew A-10s down to Davis-Monthan down to Tucson, and so that's what took us to Kansas, and then we did Army school there for 1 year, and then it took us up to Alaska. But I think what the biggest thing I learned was just having a variety of different types of coaches. I think that helped out, hearing different voices. And then just the aspect of playing with a bunch of different kids, always being exposed to, the players from Tucson and then Kansas on a traveling team, and then being a part of the Air Force communities, that you're always dealing with kids that are coming in from other parts of the country. And so very fortunate to play and get experience from a bunch of different people. And then Alaska, that was kind of an unusual thing, because being from the desert, I was like, okay, we're going to Alaska. This ought to be interesting, because my only thought was, of course, igloos. And of course, when we got up there, it was a very cool experience, and got to meet a lot of great people and had some actually great coaches that had a ton of experience that brought it in from around the world. It was great.
Any difference between Arizona soccer and Alaska soccer? Any prominent differences, or is it pretty much the same?
We got our first taste of AstroTurf up there, so that was kind of we got exposed to that for the first time. Let's see here. Other than that, it really wasn't. I mean, because the kids that we played, like I said, we were in Anchorage, outside of Anchorage, but a lot of the kids that played soccer were because they have both an Army base and an Air Force base. So you were always dealing with kids that came from around the world, so to speak. And so soccer was, even though it didn't seem like it would be much, very highly competitive. So it was good experience for sure.
In 1997, you take over the boys program at Flagstaff, and since then, you've basically been pretty much a big staple of the Flagstaff community, having a lot of success with that program. What can you attribute to your continued success with the program?
I think just being consistent, and just giving kids the opportunity to play and be a student. I felt like with all the coaching that I got, was everyone gave me a chance, and always try to help me not only be a better soccer player, but also be a better person. And I think that those kind of attributes is what I've always tried to give back to the kids that have played for me, is teaching them the game of soccer, but also being a good person. And then, of course, being a teacher is, getting it done in the classroom as much as possible.
Right. You also coach the Flagstaff United club soccer team up in the northern part of the state. Do you find that you have to tailor your coaching style at all from club compared to high school?
Yeah, it's different. I think that, one of the things is, obviously, as a student athlete playing high school athletics, you have to maintain a certain, your grades to play. Whereas the club, they those kind of, you don't have to necessarily have great grades to be playing club. But it's different in the fact that, the travel and going to the tournaments and stuff, it's different in that ways. And plus I've coached, real young kids to, kids that are also in high school. And then I've coached the girls. And so it's just been it's been a mix, and I love both as equal. They're fun. They're both fun.
Again, we were speaking with Flagstaff High School boys soccer coach Mike Jenkins. Coach, last year the Eagles finished atop the region again, going 15-3 overall, 6-0 in region, earned a trip to the playoffs. How do you think your team performed last year?
I think the goal going in was that the year before, right, we got to the semifinals and lost, but I knew I was bringing in, a large amount of those juniors that were going to be seniors that last year. And so I think that the goal going in was, let's get right back to where we were. And I think that as we were progressing through the season, we were reaching those goals. And then, it's like any season, right? The teams that are always successful and win the final game, so to speak, they have to go with a season with, very few injuries or, very few problems. And I think we had hit a block when we went down to the Christmas tournament, and I had Brian Dean got injured pretty severely, and he was a great outside left back for us. And then it's just little things after little things was just kind of, we were plugging pieces in there. We played Arcadia that first time in the season, and I had only two starting defenders in the back. And so that was that was, we knew that we had to, we couldn't make excuses, but at the same time, they were a very good team. And, without two starting defenders, they got us and they bit us and, and they took that game from us. But, so we didn't meet our goal, to be honest, but, we had a great season nonetheless. And I was very proud of what they were able to achieve. And it was a great group of kids to work with.
Last year's senior class, like you mentioned, a very, very special senior class. You watch these kids basically grow up before your eyes, having coached a lot of them when they were very, very little. How did you watch these kids develop from the kids you knew to the men that they are today? Just
I don't know, it's just like watching your own kids grow, is that, you have your ups and downs and, watching various coaches work with the kids, but they were a very tight group that always kind of stuck together and worked through things together. And, when we got a chance to work with them in high school, we knew that it was going to be something special. And to see a group of kids that, that large of a group, we had 13 seniors last year, but that many kids. And then to see them basically be a family all the way through, we had our ups and downs. We had our moments, you could go back and look on, but man, at the end of the year, I mean, it was like, they're still that tight knit group that they were when they were like little 7 and 8 year olds running around. So it's great. And, now to see them now, they're going off and doing their own thing, but it's always good to see them come back and say hi.
Well, it must be, like you mentioned, very nice to kind of see these kids grow up right before your eyes and compete at a high level and try to continue on to the next level. As we know, you do lose a good portion of your seniors this year, including Marco Avidia, who signed to play soccer at Gateway Community College. Also had an opportunity to try out for the LA Galaxy, which is quite impressive. Any other players making the jump over to the college ranks this year?
So he graduated 2 years ago, right? So he went on to play, and then but from the last year's group is most of them. I had Connor Caslin, who was a keeper, and he went out to play up in Oregon Tech. Trenton Campbell had gotten offers from California, but I think their season got canceled, and so he's kind of in this limbo stage. And then a lot of the kids, they just kind of wanted to go on and just pursue the academic route, or someone went into the workforce. And then Memo Soto, he went out to play with his brother out in Missouri. So someone went on to play, and then some of them just wanted to get on with the college life, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, very much so. We do kind of find that, a good mix of kids going to the academic route, or maybe going to the collegiate route as well. A good group of players. You do have a good portion of returners coming back for this upcoming season. Of course, as we mentioned several times, COVID-19 is kind of putting the season on pause right now. I know up in Coconino County, you guys are kind of waiting to get an opportunity to get practice going fully and get ready for the upcoming season. But who can we see really step up this year?
Well, I mean, the twins, Bennett and Riley, Bennett is an absolutely fantastic midfielder. I've always taken pride to having good midfielders throughout my season with this organization. And he's an absolutely fantastic player, student of the game, great person, puts academics first. Definitely will be playing at the next level. And then his twin brother, Riley, who's been waiting in the wings of, we had Marcos that was playing goalie, and then we had last year Connor. And so now this is his senior year to play goalie. And so we're looking for him to step up. And then I got Eli and Jonathan Alvarez and Aiden. They've all been kids that have just kind of been waiting very patiently under that strong senior class we had last year. So those 5 guys are going to have to carry the load this year for sure. But they're embracing the opportunity.
Yeah, very much so. I know how it feels to be waiting in the wings to get an opportunity up and play some sports, and it's definitely great when that opportunity comes. The JV program had a pretty decent season last year, 7-2-3. How has the development been at the lower levels for the Flagstaff soccer program?
Good. I think every year is a little bit different. I got Coach Campbell, who played for me back in the day. He's been working with the JV program now. This has been his 3rd year. And he brings a ton of knowledge in there. He was an absolute stud when he played for me. He went on and played over in Hawaii. He comes back, he brings in a ton of knowledge. He was a striker. And he helps out a lot with those offensive kind of guys. He's very patient. He's also gotten himself in the club, and I think he's now worked his way up to even be an assistant over at NAU. And so, he brings us a young, fresh, voice to the game, with a great knowledge bit. And, I think but every year is just different, on what you have to what kids are going to come out. And then with this whole COVID thing, I mean, it's been a challenge. I was just actually talking to one of my assistant coaches and just wondering, like, where are all these kids? And, you realize that it's not as easy to have like the meetings that you were able to do in school. Like, hey, there's a soccer meeting at lunch, come on in and let's talk about it. And it's all this different environment of, are the kids making sure they're checking messages and emailing. And so that's been a challenge. But the kids that have been able to come out to some of our, our workouts and everything like that, it's we've got a good group of freshmen in again, and a good, the freshmen from last year, that's a very good group. So they're sophomores this year, and a couple of them are going to be pushing to try to make a varsity roster. So we're just reloading. I think we're very fortunate, that, we have good kids that come up through our program, and that's kind of attributed to all the coaches that are working with the kids here in our city.
Yeah, we have gotten a chance to talk with a few Flagstaff coaches. Coach Tyrone Johnson, we spoke to just a couple minutes ago. Also got a chance to speak with Coach Holly Jones for the girls program. Weeks ago. A lot of great coaches up there in Northern Arizona and throughout the 4A Grand Canyon region. As I've been doing the show, getting a chance to speak with coaches like yourself and those who have stayed in the community for so long, those who have ties to the state of Arizona, some who have even played for the high school. As you mentioned, your assistant JV coach is a former player of yours, which has got to be kind of interesting, to see them as a player and then to come up as a coach as well, to be coach in the future. But, as you mentioned, the team might be retooling a little bit this year, but what can we expect from the Eagles this year when we finally get the winter season kicked off?
You're going to see a competitive team, as usual. We like to play a lot of possession. We like the beautiful game, we call it. I think they're just going to be young. And I think with this environment, right, is since we're not really allowed to have the tryouts, so to speak, right now, is how fast can we gel as a team, being young, and can those juniors that are now seniors take that leadership role and then buy into the system. I know that, I think that Prescott, with those guys down there, they're going to be, they had a large junior class. So I think it's going to be their turn to be the one. Can we knock them off the pedestal? We go back and forth. I love Phil. We've been coaching together now for a couple of years. Over a decade probably together against each other. And so there's a lot of respect both ways, and he's going to have his boys. So I think, I'll have our boys will be ready to play. It's just how fast can we get them together? Because I think they have the advantage right now, because I think they are actually allowed to have tryouts and everything. So they're officially they've got a little step on us right now. So we'll have to put it into overgear here when we get back and are allowed to actually start practice.
Well, we're excited whenever the winter season kicks off and whenever you guys get an opportunity to start practicing and getting those kids out there kicking the soccer ball around and getting ready for an exciting winter season in a very strange 2020 COVID year. But Coach, one more question for you. Sure. When it goes through your program, what can they expect from you as a coach, and what do you expect from them as a player?
I think one of the things that I always preach is just camaraderie, teamwork. Getting it done in the classroom is probably the most important thing, because, the chances of anyone actually becoming a professional player is very, very small, right? But we've got to make sure that, we get it done in the classroom so that, you have lots of opportunities to pursue whatever other dreams you may have besides becoming a professional or a collegiate soccer player. Because, even if you were to become a pro soccer player, right, you eventually you have to join the workforce and do something. And so getting a job in the classroom and just being part of a team and knowing that I'm going to treat you fairly and that give you respect. And that's kind of what we like to preach. And just have a good time, man. This is a crazy year. So I think that's the other thing, is that, try to make this year as fun as possible, because I think that a lot of people have had, it's just kind of been a blah year, but we'll try to make the most of it and get the kids out there and putting a smile on their faces is the best thing.
Well, again, we are speaking with Flagstaff High School boys soccer coach Mike Jenkins. Coach, thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you for being a part of the community for so long, and we're looking forward to some Eagles soccer when we get the winter season kicked off.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Of course, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be joined by Flagstaff girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. On the other side of this break, off the bench, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined by an absolute Northern Arizona legend in Flagstaff girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Coach, welcome onto the program.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Now, I do have to ask beforehand, your hat, is that a Boston Celtics hat or a Notre Dame hat?
It's neither. It's a golf hat. It got that Lucky brand. So,
all right, good. I'm a Lakers fan, so I would have taken a little insult to it if it was a Boston Celtics fan, but it looks good nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I'm a Spurs fan, so yeah, I couldn't do the Boston Celtics.
You've been coaching the program for a very long time. You mentioned 15 years. You've been with the girls program up in Flagstaff High School. Last year, the girls finished 16-3 overall, undefeated in region, made it to the playoffs. But this isn't your first time being atop the region. For years now, since you've taken over, this team has been consistently in the playoffs at the top of the region. What has been the secret to this team's long-term success?
Well, I think mostly it's buy-in. Our first year, we barely missed the playoffs as far as state. And we had a game canceled that if we would have played that game, win or loss, we would have made that final spot. And so after that year, we had a nice freshman class come in. And then from then on out, just the work ethic and the way that they presented themselves, everybody else that came along bought in and just tried to keep, in tune to the work that they were doing. And so it's just been, fortunate for us that when they come in with not even expectations, but knowing that there's a certain level of expectation that they have to live up to and work towards. And so I think their buy-in just when they come into the program has been good. And our feeder programs as far as into the varsity, our freshmen and our JV have been very successful. We've had a coaching staff intact for mostly the duration. And so I think that consistency, the girls know what they're going to get when they come over to Flag High.
It's very funny. You mentioned you're a Spurs fan. You talk about consistency. I mean, the San Antonio Spurs have been doing it for a very long time, consistently replacing players in the draft. Greg Popovich, of course, the big three with Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan. You take a little inspiration from Coach Popovich at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you're a basketball fan and especially a coach and you understand the game and you see the incredible things that Pop was doing, I mean, up until this year in the bubble, being a playoff team every year and being able to take players that weren't necessarily the top players, but put them into roles to where they could be successful. And then they go along with your top players. I mean, just the way that Pop teaches and instructs, I mean, that's definitely an inspiration for any aspiring basketball coach, I would think.
Well, very much like the San Antonio Spurs were a headache for me growing up. Like I mentioned, the Flagstaff Eagles have probably been a headache for a few teams in the 4A Grand Canyon region. As I mentioned, this is a very, very strong girls program. Past 3 years, you guys have been undefeated in the region. You graduate a few seniors this year, including your second leading scorer in Emma Doskus. I apologize for botching her name, but you watched this senior class grow as freshmen. Let's just talk a little bit about that growth as players and also what impact they made for the team last year.
Well, Emma, she did come in as a freshman. When she originally came in the summer before her freshman year, I had heard about her. You get to see a little bit in AAU, but until we do June ball, you really don't know if they can play at that level. And so when she came in, we were playing in AAU ball, actually, and I brought her up to play with the Varsity because everybody was talking about how she could shoot. And it was one game she might have hit like 7 threes. I say, she going to mess around and shoot her way. So the skill had always been there. And so, as she made Varsity as a freshman, just watching her transformation into a great leader is one of the things that I remember the most about her, because she could always shoot the basketball, but then just going from, more of a timid personality to outspoken into a leader on the court, off the court, and just a great individual and really shaping the way that our leaders should be. And they know that, hey, if we're going to lead, we got to lead like Emma. And just seeing her maturation throughout was awesome. And then, we get that with other players as well. But Emma was probably the epitome of that.
Coach, you mentioned off the air that Emma decided to go the academic route with her plans for college. Do you feel like maybe there's not necessarily a bit of a stigma, but a hesitation when a player wants to, they have dreams to go play at the college level, but maybe they aren't getting the offers. We know COVID-19 right now is stinting a lot of the growth of some players because they haven't gotten an opportunity to show off a lot, on film or to college scouts. But, what would you say to a player right now who is in that position thinking maybe I should just go the academic route right now as opposed to continuing their collegiate sports career?
Well, for me, the thing that you want to make sure of, you just got to make sure that you're absolutely comfortable with your decision, and then you go with it. And it has to be a situation to where you're comfortable. If you played high school and you got all that you wanted out of high school, and now your aspirations and dreams change, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're kind of wavering back and forth, my thing would be, push out there and give it a try, because the academic route will be there. Irregardless, you can go back to college at, 45 if you chose and go to get more education and classes and even another degree. You can only do this basketball. The window of opportunity is much smaller. And so if you give it a try and it's not for you, then continue with your academics. But if you can do it and you still enjoy it and you can allow it to pay for some education, you can allow it to give you more experiences. Like for me, when I was playing, traveled to places that I probably never would have went, just, on the road, going and play in different cities and everything. And you get to experience different people, and it ultimately sets you up for the way you're going to live your life. And so I would encourage you, if you're on the fence, to do it. If you know it's something that you want to do, don't stop at the first no. Keep knocking at doors, keep sending out stuff to coaches, look at walk-on opportunities, do whatever it takes if it's something that you really want to do, and pursue it.
Very inspiring words from Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Coach, this year you come back returning a good portion of your team, including your leading scorer and freshman standout Maya Verse, along with Gracelyn Nez, who is now a junior. She was a sophomore last year. On paper, when you look at this team, not a lot of seniors, very, very young team. How prepared are they right now to compete for a state title?
Well, we've had some changes. Maya Verse is no longer attending Flag High. Well, she's still a student at Flag High. She's not going to play basketball because she's going to play with the prep scene. And so we won't have her. Gracelyn will be back. We'll still be young in terms of not many seniors, but experienced in the sense that we had a lot of young people that got good minutes last year. And then we do have a couple freshman guards that have been very impressive when we've been doing off-season workouts. And so it'll be a different look. We'll lose size, obviously, with Maya, but hopefully we can gain some athleticism and some pressure defensively over what we had that we lost last year to our seniors. And so we won't have anybody that could shoot it like Emma outside of maybe Grace. But I think we'll be competitive. It just really depends on, like you say, the virus, the situation. For us, we can't even practice yet up this way. And so we'll see what the ultimate vote is. And then if they give us the go ahead to where we can practice and compete, we just going to get out there and we're going to push like we always do. And we're going to try and be competitive in every game.
You know, we got a chance to see Gracelyn Nez on the volleyball team. She is one of their leading outside hitters, and she's got quite a vertical jump, Coach. How close is she to throwing one down on the basketball floor?
I don't know if Grace is quite there to be able to throw one down on the basketball floor. Maya, her freshman year, she was grabbing the rim. But Gracelyn, you know, that's one thing I noticed she's really been working on because as great of an athlete as she is and as great of a basketball player as she is, you know, volleyball was her first sport, her first love. And so, you know, when she comes out, we just appreciate her being on the floor and her abilities. But I know she's really been working on her vertical because that's one of the stats that the college volleyball coaches look at, you know. When you're doing volleyball, you got girls at 6'2" with a 36-inch vertical. And, you know, Grace being about 5'9", you know, she's been working at that vertical, really trying to get up so that, you know, she can get those letters and maybe take that route to college with volleyball. But if she really wanted to do basketball, she's one that can play collegiately as well, basketball. So she's just a gifted player.
A very, very talented player, very much so. Yeah, Gracelyn Nez was a lot of fun to watch for volleyball, and we look forward to watching her when basketball actually picks up again. As you mentioned, Coach, with COVID-19, we're kind of in a pause right now with the winter season. But this past October, you were awarded the Spirit of Cotton Award, named after longtime Phoenix Suns coach Cotton Fitzsimmons. What does an award like that mean to you?
You know, it was definitely an honor to receive that award. And the biggest take that you get from it is it's an award that not necessarily your accomplishments on the court is the reason that you're getting that award. It's an award because somebody saw something in you that reminded you of the characteristics that Coach Fitzsimmons had and that, you know, stood out for the criteria for the award. And so to have Ms. Brandel see those qualities in me and nominate me, and then the supporting letters that came along with it from, you know, players, coaches, you know, community members, and just to see that they hold those values true about you as well. I mean, that's pretty touching and, you know, pretty humbling to see and to know that, you know, people hold you in that type of light.
You know, you mentioned that during the announcement video, there was a lot of players and personnel, and including your mom, who also had some great words for you, words of encouragement, words of inspiration, how you've impacted them. Speaking more for new coaches, how can they build those relationships with players, personnel, other coaches, and the community starting up with a new program?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, you know, understand why you're doing it. For me, when I came into coach, I wasn't doing it for myself. I wasn't doing it to, you know, hey, look at Coach Johnson, or there was never anything about me that I was doing it for. I was doing it, 1, for the love of the game, 2, to grow the game, and then 3, to really be a liaison to the talent that we have here in Flagstaff, because I felt we had enough talent here in Flagstaff that could move on to the next level. And I felt I could be a piece of that to really help navigate them and then show them how to work to be able to get those opportunities. And so, you know, I would say be true to yourself. One thing I'm always telling the girls, you know, some of my philosophy, I'm firm, I'm fair, and I'm consistent. I'm not going to be one day because we lost the game coming in there and making them run, you know, for 2 hours. I'm not going to, you know, be just because we won a game, oh, now y'all don't get to do anything. We're going to be firm, we're going to be fair, and we're going to be consistent across the board. So they know what they get. And if they know that, you know, you're really there in their best interest, they're going to work hard for you. And then that's how those relationships build. And, you know, to see girls from our first year on there on the Zoom call up to, you know, this current team, I mean, it was special. And, you know, some of them I hadn't seen in a while. I don't do the social media thing, so I don't necessarily get to see everybody like everybody else does. And so, you know, to see them pop up on the screen and to hear them talk, I mean, that was awesome. And I think those types of relationships can be built when they just, you know, trust what you're doing. And so I just say, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it for the accolades. I mean, if the accolades come, great, but, you know, do it because you love to do it, because you want to advance the game and you're in a position to help people out.
You know, Coach, I think the words you just said are the exact reason why you were gifted an award like that, the Spirit of Cotton Award. Deservedly so, going to you, Coach. You know, building the game of basketball and building some fine people along the way as well. Speaking of new coaches, rival school over at Coconino High School gets a new basketball coach in Cassie Schrader. You actually got an opportunity to coach Cassie Schrader at the youth level, and we got a chance to speak with her last week, and she did mention you as one of the mentors and inspirations for her as a player and now as a coach. How does it feel now to go full circle, seeing her coach the future of girls basketball in Northern Arizona and, kind of mentoring the future like you did with her?
Cassie's and I was gonna say Cassie's a great kid, but Cassie ain't a kid no more. So Cassie's a great person. She was an awesome basketball player, had a great work ethic, and the things that she had as a basketball player, I noticed she's gonna bring into her coaching. I haven't got a chance to talk to her since she got the position, but I definitely want to congratulate her. I think the program is in good hands. She's going to be committed. She's going to work hard for the girls. And if they'll buy into what she's doing, she's going to have some success. And so there's no doubt in my mind that it was a good hire for Coconino. She'll continue on what Coach Reyes had already built up because, he built the program back up to where it was solid and competitive as well throughout the state. And so I think Cassie will keep that going. And, it's cool just to see, some of the kids that you coached and you see them come up and you see them play and then you see them move on in life. And then now you see them in positions to where they can give back and to where they can help others and you know what they're about and you just know that they're going to do good. And so I'm looking forward to really seeing her come out on the varsity level. I got to see her when she was at the JV level and everything and freshman level. But now that she's at the varsity level, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see her and to compete against her. And, I'm going to have to work hard to just keep the teacher aspect up as opposed to being taught. So
do you think this adds a little bit more zest to that Flagstaff Coconino rivalry?
I don't know if it'll add more zest because Cassie didn't attend Coconino. Like I attended Flag High and went to Flag High for my high school and then obviously coaching there now. Cassie was NPA when she came up. And so I don't know if it'll quite put that on there, but it'll just be fun. Like when when Coach Reyes, when he was coaching, we played against each other in high school. He was at Coco. I was at Flag High. He played on one of the greatest teams, I think, that the state has ever seen. When they lost, they were like, I want to say 31-1 or something. And they lost in the state championship game. But, he got me a few times in high school. I think I may have got him once or twice. I don't remember. But he got the best of me in high school. And then, coaching, he was definitely all Panthers. I was all Eagles. And, so that made it fun to get back and get at it. And so I don't know if it'll quite be a rivalry like that, but it'll still be good because Flag High Coconino is always a rivalry.
Yes, it is. It is always fun to watch those two teams go at it. A lot of history between those two programs, a lot of history between former Coach Martin Reyes, of course, and you, Coach, and then some history between you and Cassie Schrader. But we're all excited to see what the Eagles have to offer this season, when we finally get started for the winter season. As we all know, we're in a current pause. But, Coach, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the program. Congratulations on the award. I could not think of anybody more deserving. It was great to meet you, and we look forward to speaking to you a little bit later in the season.
Likewise, I definitely look forward to speaking to y'all, and I definitely appreciate you reaching out and having me on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Coach. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more sports right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm Philip Catalfamo. I'd like to welcome you back here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. I'd like to thank you for watching and listening each and every week. We've got a great show for you next week. We'll be joined by a bunch of Mingus Union Marauders. First and foremost, former Mingus Union swimmer and current Midland University swimmer Fletch Fangman. We'll be joined by current Mingus Union Marauder Zach Figge. And finally, we'll be joined by former Mingus Union Marauder swimmer and current Northern Arizona University lumberjack Emma Warner about her time in the pool while going through cancer treatment. All of that and a whole lot more right here on Off the Bench. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. We'll see you next time.